is Sam. Thanks for checking out this video. If you get to the end and liked it, then give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe, and the bell notification button. Please bear with me. I hope the lighting is okay. We are having one of those days where it's overcast for 5 minutes and then sunny for 5 minutes and overcast, and it's just going to be like that all day. So yeah, I want to tell you all about the books that I read this week. I read a good amount of books this week, and I have quite a few that I really enjoyed. So these are those books. So first off, I finally got to my arc of The Downstairs Girl by Stacey Lee. I got this in January, I think, and I just didn't know quite what to expect from this, and I actually feel like it maybe should have been marketed a little bit differently because it has some really interesting topics that if I had known were in here, then I probably would have made a point to pick it up a couple months ago. So this story follows Jo. She's 17 years old. She is Chinese in the United States after the Civil War and after slavery is no longer a thing, but when we still have big, ginormous class issues. And she, unfortunately, as it kind of discusses in this book here, is Chinese and her parents are gone. So she was basically adopted by an older Chinese gentleman in the area that she knows in some way was connected to her parents, but doesn't exactly know how or who her mother even is. She knows that her father left, but that's kind of it. So this story follows Jo as she straddles this world where she's dealing with a lot of racism and trying to just survive, but then she's also involved writing anonymously, basically like suggestion letters to a newspaper, and the newspaper decides to start publishing them because she has some more liberal-leaning ideas, and they think it'll rile up conversation and increase subscriptions for their newspaper, which is struggling right now. So she takes all these topics and things that she's running into in her life, and then writes under a pseudonym of Mrs. Sweetie, or Miss Sweetie, sorry, and submits kind of her thoughts on them, but under the pretense basically that Miss Sweetie is a white woman, she's middle class, so people are more likely to lean in and give either at least like lend an ear, listen to the ideas, and then talk about them, rather than just not even publishing them. I thought it was really interesting. This book pretty continuously deals with racism, and I feel like a lot of books that I've read and why I focus on racism towards the African American population because it is such a large part of their history. But we sort of do the same thing in Canada, that we pretend that we didn't basically like force immigration almost. A lot of Asian population, especially Chinese and Japanese in Canada, and they built the train systems here, and then we treated them like third-class citizens. And then in World War II, we had internment camps against the Japanese. So like it's a topic that I feel like is slowly starting to blossom now possibly because we now have a bunch of new Asian debut authors, which is fantastic that we're getting that stuff. There is also a black side character in this though, so we can see a lot of the parallels between Jo and her co-worker at the time. And it's also this weird time period where some people are starting to change their opinions of how we treat people, racism, and income and jobs, and then there's people who are kind of stuck in these ancient ways. I really actually enjoyed this. It doesn't have really any big like super like action-y high peak, but I feel like the topic itself was very interesting. You cannot help but feel just empathetic for Jo. She's put in this horrible situation. She's a genuinely really good person. She wants to, she's incredibly skilled at hat making, and of course she loses her job right at the beginning of the book because she's Chinese and as a hat maker, and then she kind of tries to just find a job to survive. There's also this really interesting thing that they can't find anywhere to live because people don't want to rent to them because they're Chinese. So there's this just a lot of issues that are brought up in here that I feel like there's things that when we talk about racism today, we do take for granted, things like protection laws. We have those in Canada. Now people always try and find their ways around them, and we still do have people that will unfortunately post ads. I've seen actually a couple of years ago, it was all over the news in Canada, someone posted like an ad something along the lines of Indigenous need not apply. So people are still racist like that, but we have a lot of these protection and laws now to protect a lot of people in those situations, and those isolated incidents of racism are more flagged in the media now. Back here it was just like, yeah, of course you're racist, you don't rent to the Chinese. Like it's quite startling actually when you look now to them. We can always do better, but we've made great strides, which is fantastic. We have a lineage reveal because this whole thing of who exactly is her parents And then we have a little bit of romance. I don't know that it was totally necessary, but I thought it was cute because it is a mixed race romance for the time period. I really would recommend reading this if you're interested at all in discussions on race in recent history, really. And I was really impressed with this, actually. Then I did a very quick reread of The Kiss Quote by Helen Wong. I love this book so much. I kind of want to reread it already again. I mean, I just reviewed this book the other week on my channel, but amazing romance. This book has gotten me more interested in the romance genre. We have a main character who has Asperger's and hires a prostitute to try and learn the social cues and how exactly you would have sex because she doesn't think she's good at it, and exactly how you are in a relationship because these are just social cues that she doesn't really know. She doesn't know how to pick up on them. Some of them she's not comfortable with, and her thought process is, well, okay, I'll hire a prostitute and learn. So that's when we meet Michael. It's a fantastic book. I love it. I love the sexy scenes. I love Michael so much. And it's just a really fun book. And I still can't help but laugh when she pulls out the taser at the beginning on their first date. It's amazing. So yes, highly recommend The Kiss Quote. Then I read Murder Trending by Gretchen McNeil, right? It's McNeil, right? Sorry, I returned my library copy to the library. This is an insanely weird book, and I loved it. So Gretchen is actually going to be in the TBR and Beyond group later this month to do a live chat, and this book, and then its companion, Murder Funding, is the group reads for the month. This is a weird book. And it was just so refreshing to read, to be totally honest. It's messed up in like the bestest of ways, okay? So our main character is very quickly, within like 2 days, accused, tried, and found guilty of murdering her stepsister and sent to Alcatraz 2.0, which is basically some Hollywood bajillionaire that no one really can pin down exactly who it is, purchased Alcatraz and now has basically made all of these like people who get sent like to jail, sends them to Alcatraz 2.0, and then they are kind of slowly picked off by these like headhunter mass murderers that they hire for Alcatraz 2.0. So you have to always be on your guard, and it's this like everyone works, and if you work you get enough money to eat, but all of a sudden she's shipped there with a bunch of these like hardened criminals, and she's like a 17-year-old who had like a botched trial, and she shows up, and someone in this, people can watch on cams, and it's basically this online reality show, but the government has basically sold off the justice system to this bajillionaire, and it's all based around what would happen if you elected a reality star to become your president. Yeah, okay. It's someone in the chats, because we get like text, and then we have at the end of each chapter or so, you see the streaming comments from like watchers, right? And there's always those people who are like, fake news media. You know those Trump supporters now that just yell fake news when there's anything that's like not pro-Trump? That there's those sort of people in the comments, and then there's like all these like conspiracy theory nuts, and then there's people who just like buy in and drink all the Kool-Aid, right? So, but you see these chats, and in one of the chats, someone calls them this group of people that she kind of joins, and they kind of try and help each other survive as long as possible on Alcatraz. Someone refers to them as Death Row Breakfast Club, and that is the most accurate description I can think of for this book. So, there is death. Several of the Death Row Breakfast Club people are murdered by like the higher up like mass murderers that are paid to do that. It's just very interesting. We have all these casts, but then there's also this past story that keeps coming up with the main character. When she was younger, a couple of years before her trial, before she's accused of murdering her stepsister, she was kidnapped by someone and escaped, and she thinks that person is back and somehow involved in the botched trial. But as they keep talking to each other, they're finding out all of their trials were botched, and then they find out just all these weird connections, and they know something's up. The ending was fantastic, amazing. I loved it so much. It would be a really freaking cool adaptation. Even if Netflix or Hulu, actually HBO could probably do a good version of it, wanted to do like a mini series around it, Murder Trending would be fantastic. I am so excited with how it ended, because Murder Funding is all about one of the mass murder characters who does all the killing on Alcatraz. No one knows who those people are, and their situations happen at the end. So the companion novels is one of their kids who doesn't know that her mother, is a mass murderer. And I am so freaking excited for that now. The concept of having to booby trap your house because people can just come in and like kidnap you and murder you, your odds are based on the population of the island, which is less than 100, and the concept, like, I felt anxiety just reading that, not even having to live it. The anxiety of having to deal with that would just be like the biggest of hell no's for me. Like, I don't even, I cannot comprehend how I would function in that situation, especially without anxiety medication. Then I tried to pick up The Merciful Crow. People were like praising the heck out of this, so I was really optimistic. The only reason I hadn't bought it was because I was like, I don't think they had a pre-order that included Canada, and I don't think the book had gone on sale, and it wasn't in our bookstore here, so I just never ended up picking it up. So I got it through the library instead, and I got to chapter 8, and I was just so bored, like, immensely bored. And I asked my friends who read it, was like, so, like, are things gonna, like, pick up, or, like, is there gonna be a character standout that's gonna start getting a really good arc? And they're like, no, it's just pretty slow. And I'm like, okay, like, I can appreciate slow books, but, like, is anything gonna be done with that slow movement? Like, no, I kind of liked it as soon as it started. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a couple extra chapters. Got to chapter 8, which is, I think, like page 110 or 120, and I was just so done already. There's, like, some, like, weird magic with teeth, which I think is what everyone seemed to really love, but it just, nothing about it caught my interest. I think it's a situation of, I've probably read this book before, when I was saying before, I've been reading a lot of the YA books that I feel like are the exact same, that you can just substitute in and out a couple words, terms, magic types, and it's basically the same book. I think that kind of falls under this. It's not necessarily bad, I just had no interest in reading it at the time. I just didn't feel like it. Nothing was piquing my interest. So then I read Cogheart. This was such a cute little middle grade book. It's very short. I love the cover of the series. It is a steampunk sort of historical fiction. As an adult reading middle grade, I really enjoy middle grade. Sometimes the books are just going to hit you in the feels, like Ashley Herring Blake. I don't care what age you are when you read Ashley Herring Blake's books. I challenge you not to cry, okay? It's just the books are really suitable for any age. This one is, as an adult reading, middle grade, this was like you could see the plot from out. We've all read this plot before, but it was in a really unique setting. I really liked the characters. They were quite scrappy. I also think the book just has a lot darker of a tone than most middle grades that I read. It really did remind me of Coraline and Stardust. They're space pirates, like sky pirates and all that stuff, which I feel like are heavily underused in just books in general. I want more of that kind of stuff. But the characters are really, really good, and they're strong, and it's just a fun, quick steampunk read. It's a very dark start. People get murdered and go missing, and kidnapping, and then our main character is essentially looking for her godfather, who she's gotten a note from her missing father saying, you know, he's your godfather, and she goes, okay, I'll go find him, and then she goes to London and finds him, and you know, he wasn't the help she thought he was going to be. And I think from there the plot is pretty predictable, but it's just enjoyable. The characters are pretty solid, and it was just a good... I haven't read a steampunk book in quite a while, I feel like, and like sometimes steampunk can just get really deep and dark and just like this large world, which I don't always want. This is just like a sort of dipping your toes in the water. And I think I will eventually read the second book. I don't know when, but it was just a fun, cute read. Then I picked up The Last Word by Samantha Hastings. I read this book in like 3.5 hours. It's insanely quick. I think the book's 240 pages. But there's like, it's got a slightly different typeset, so I feel like it takes up a bit more space than Ariel or Times New Roman would. And it was just like a very quick read. There's a decent amount of dialogue, a lot of like chunk text with large gaps in them. This is a very swoon reads book. So it follows our main character. Her mother has passed away, and ever since that has happened, her father, who runs the accounting company that they own, has gotten very withdrawn, and he started shuttering her up, in going to traditional, like, sending her to finishing school and being like, oh, you have to be like this proper woman and you can just stay at home. She's not down for that. She's very smart. She loves math. And she used to help with her father at his accounting company before. So she's very frustrated that she's finished finishing school, which she detested and barely got through. And then now she has like a lady's maid monitoring her. And then her father's like, no, you just have to go get married. And she's like, cool, I'd rather kill myself than do this. So she runs into her father's partner at the business that they run together. And he's her age. His father had passed away, who was the original partner with her father. And he's actually the one that she believes got her sent to finishing school. She told him something when they were younger because they were friends, and then quickly thereafter she's sent away. So she has a bone to pick with him. But it all revolves around the main character. Her one joy in life is reading this short story, essentially, that's being published bit by bit through a local magazine. And it starts, she gets the newest edition, she reads, it sounds a little bit like a Jane Austen what's that, like, is it Mr. Darcy and there's a love triangle between two men, but she's like an independent woman. Anyway, I should probably read something by her to know the comparisons I keep making. But it ends with the writer who was writing this has suddenly passed away, and she didn't write the ending of to who the girl picks in the love triangle. So she is upset. Girl, we can all understand. I feel if anyone's going to understand that, this is the book community that will. So she decides to go to the magazine that's publishing this and demand to get the information to go to find this original writer to see if maybe they just didn't publish it or talk to people that she knew to see if what her ending was going to be if she didn't finish writing it. But she needs, of course, like a chauffeur, a monitor. What's the word I'm looking for? Chaperone. That's the word. So she has her like lady chaperone, but then, you know, she's leaving the town. She essentially lies to the guy that she was friends with as a kid that got her sent to finishing school. And then a romance sort of starts developing as they're searching for this woman, and they keep kind of getting like little pebbles along the way of information and kind of going to different places around. I liked the main character. She's not stupid or ditzy. She has a couple friends that she seems to be like drawn to the same sorts of people. The romance is to a very much pro-feminist gentleman who's like, whatever, if you want to do math here, you can do some of my work and you can feel like you're accomplishing something and I'll pay you for it. I'll just kind of work around your father. So I loved parts of this. It's a very basic read. It's a very swoon read. You're not getting anything new from this. You're not getting any diversity from this. But it is a very quick, fun read. I also picked up The Box and the Dragonfly. This was... I have to go through my Instagrams and DM the person back, but whoever recommended it to me on DMs on Instagram, thank you. This was a wonderful book. It grabbed me right away. I was so into it right away. It reminded me of a couple different like middle grades that I've read, but not in a way of like copying or anything like that. It just certain things that characters do in books just reminded me vividly of it. Our main character is on the school bus coming home from school. His name is Horace, which... I don't know if I like that name or not, but anyways. But he ends up in this magical shop, and essentially he's getting run and chased after by that magical shop's, like, villain, like his Voldemort, okay? So he ends up having this box, which is a time-traveling machine, basically, so for items. And it only works, though, when he has it in his possession. And then he also meets a girl who can essentially walk through items. She can go transparent when she has her dragonfly token. And again, that Voldemort character is after them, and he has a little bit of an underground cult. So they need to protect it, their tokens, and also themselves. And they also have their own kind of stuff going on. I cannot wait to read the second book. Despite the fact the first book was really big, it is quite big for a middle grade, it didn't feel like it really lagged at any point. I feel like there was a lot of interesting development in the magic, their home lives, their background stories, their family lives, but there's still a lot of like unanswered questions. They're very smart kids. I loved that. Last week, I also forgot to put this book in my review video, The Girl Who Can Move Shit With Her Mind by Jackson Ford. This reminded me of The Scorpion. Remember that show with Katharine McPhee in it? Was in it for a while. I think they got canceled after like 4 seasons or so. Or just like any like contemporary like action-y based copish drama thing, or any like government side project sort of people. It's basically like taking the government side project people the way that you do in Scorpion and like making them like incognito part of you. But one of the main characters has the ability to move shit with her mind. Okay? And all of a sudden she's set up for a murder. And then we start finding out, okay, we thought she was the only one with these powers. Her parents genetically, like, modified her to have these powers. She had siblings that had other powers, but they have since passed away. So how exactly did someone else get these same powers as her? So they're on this chase to find out exactly what's going on there. There's a lot of betrayal at the end. It's a weird, interesting book. It's pretty steady, high-paced. Again, too, despite the size of this book, it's 450 pages almost. Yeah, it's a pretty steady, high pace. I liked the main character. She's very witty, sarcastic. I definitely feel a lot of infusions or influences from Veronica Mars, the TV show, into the characters and just the atmosphere and the mystery. I just really enjoyed that. Tegan is just a really interesting character, and all of her figuring out her magic in this is really magic powers, whatever in this. It's basically like the Scorpion meets X-Men, almost, I guess, is like the easiest way to explain it. I am also incredibly excited for the sequel, which, as stated in the end of this book, the story will continue in random shit flying through the air. So, whoever is naming these books, ace job. Like, you get 1,000,000 gold stars. This was a fun, really surprise random read that I just picked up by fluke because of the title of the bookstore, and I actually really ended up enjoying it. So huzzah, and I will definitely be picking up the sequel. Then I also read A Treason of Thorns by Laura Weymouth, literally the day I got it in the mail. This is her new standalone after The Light Between Worlds, her debut work, which hit me in the stupid feels. This is more of a fantasy with historical fiction, where I think is her original book, her first book was more of a historical fiction with some fantasies, I think. Anyways, there's just like kind of differences in how much we lean into fantasies in one or the other. But this is set in England, where there are master houses, 6 across the country, and they each have like someone to run it. And unfortunately, our main character, Violet, her father is one of those people, and he's accused of treason at the beginning of it. So he's bound up in the house, which is called Burley. And the house is basically told, you're not going to get a new caretaker until you deal with this one. And he ends up passing away. She is sent away, and her godfather is the king at the time, who is a total douche canoe. She finally comes back, let back, once her father has officially passed away at the hands of the Burley house. And she asks, because she wanted to originally take over her father's position, she asks to be the caretaker, to try and fix Burley up, because its magic once helped the community around it. They had really profitable farming. All of it has gone dark, and it killed her father, and ever since then it's gone like evil, and the community is struggling. There's no income happening anymore. So she says, give me the summer before you do whatever you want with me. Give me the summer to try and fix it. And we end up finding out all this stuff about the houses being bound by deeds, but then also the fact that England's not the only one with houses that have magical powers, and everything her father did. It's quite interesting. She has this beef with her mother. It's just so much going on. Her writing, Laura Weymouth's writing, lends itself so spectacularly perfectly to dark gothic fantasies and fairy tales. These things, not the same type of writing necessarily as like Laini Taylor, but like their writing is just so like meant to be happening in a specific genre, and it's so lyrical and beautiful and lush and luxurious. This could have easily fallen, if it had been like another author, just into a lot of YA tropes. Not that that's bad, but it would have just not been this book. This book is just so not about the fact that it's set in England and that the main character has a romance. That's not the point. It happens, but that's not the point of this book. Burley House is just so fascinating. All of the magic incorporated, the background to its existence as it is, it's just so fascinating. There is so much freaking potential for a companion to this as well. I hope it sells well enough, and Laura Weymouth would want to do that, because it talks in very brief the fact that there are different types of magical houses across Europe, but England did something very specific that created this situation where we have those 6 houses, and it's all run by the king, and if those houses start crumbling, then the whole community itself starts crumbling. And it talks about all of these different ones, like there's talking about the Pompeii, and I want them to take one of those other places that's in mainland Europe or in North America or anywhere, and just do a whole thing on a different time period in this different geographic area, the magic that it had under a new house, not Burley, something else. I would just be so incredibly interested to read that. I will read anything this woman writes. Her writing is so insanely good. If you like her writing, you're going to love every book she puts out, really. I now want to reread The Light Between Worlds. Not that I didn't really want to before, but I really want to now. And I hope she gets more stuff bought by publishers. Her writing is fantastic. Seriously, the covers that she's gotten for both of her books are insane. The covers, though, in addition to being stunning on the bookshelf, are actually they relate to the content inside. So this is very much a representation of what Burley is. And it's fantastic, and I would really highly recommend everyone pick up her work. And I think the last book that I read this week was The Invasion of the Tierling by Erica Johansson. This is the sequel to The Queen of the Tierling. And I know this is the one that everyone seems to consistently be like, Queen of the Tierling, Invasion of the Tierling, and The Fate of the Tierling down here. However, I did see on Goodreads that she said she is writing a 4th and a 5th Tierling book. I don't know if it's going to be the same series, if it's a spin-off, whatever's happening. But she said that in the next couple years they should be coming out. So I'm curious about that, to see how that's going to go. I like Kelsey. I think my confusion with this book is that I think I enjoyed the background more than Kelsey's timeline. So in this, Kelsey keeps having these flashbacks she doesn't know who, but it's this woman in the past, and she meets William Tierling, who is like the founder of their kind of stuff. And it's like essentially the lead up to what happens before Tierling leaves the former United States in this dystopian, really sexist Handmaid's Tale kind of sounding place, and starts, what becomes her kingdom that she's the queen of. I think I was more interested in that story, and the magic is going on in here. I'm so confused by a lot of it. I don't totally comprehend a lot of it, but I like the characters, so I'm really conflicted. I think the plot was a little bit all over the place in this one, but I like the character. Oh, that's another big thing, sorry. Big trigger warning in this for rape, domestic abuse, and self-harm. There's this woman, she's married to a man, he's physically and sexually abusive to her, so she doesn't want to have kids, and he's taking the pain out that they're not having kids on her, which is the reason, like, this cycle. So she's been going through black market dealers to get essentially birth control to make sure she won't have kids with him, and it's this whole downfall that leads to the Tierling, like, William Tierling leaving the United States, and they're this whole like terrorist organization at the time period before they leave. So it's just it's just really interesting. I kind of wanted more of that rather than Kelsey's timeline. I like this book, but I was more interested in the other timeline. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's where I'm at, and hopefully I won't hate the fate of the Tierling. So those are all the books that I read this week. Let me know in the comment section down below if you've read any of these books. I would love to know. And let me know what you read this week too. I would also love to know. Make sure to check the description box down below. I will link all of these books to their Goodreads pages, and I will also link all of my social media. If you follow me, I will follow you back, and I will see you on Tuesday.